morning and happy holidays. My name is Erica Rodriguez and I'm the Office Manager in C&D Delivery Service Office Industry Outreach, and I'm also the Treasurer for Latino and Friends. For our final Cafecito chat for 2025, Latino and Friends would like to welcome Hector Garcia, Chief of Staff of Long Island Railroad. Hector earned a BA in Political Science from Columbia University and was a communications specialist in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve for 6 years. Thank you for your service. He first came to LIRR as a station appearance maintainer in 1991 and later held increasingly responsible positions within the LIRR Market Development and Public Affairs Department. In his most recent role as Senior Director of External Affairs, Hector served as a strategic lead on all manner of sensitive political, press, community, and public policy issues. As Chief of Staff, Hector provides overall leadership and direction to executive staff of LIRR strategic initiatives. Interviewing Hector today is Ms. Carol Perez, Director of Energy Management and Contract Compliance. Thank you, everyone, for coming today.
Okay, hello, Hector.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us today and allowing us the time to interview you. I'm sure everyone is excited to hear what you have to share. So let's jump right in, and thank you for your service, as we mentioned earlier. So you began your career as a station appearance maintainer, and you are now the Chief of Staff in LIRR. How has that full spectrum experience changed your life?
I mean, I grew up at the railroad. It allowed me the opportunity to have a career and also to raise a family. So one question somebody may ask is like, this probably was inevitable that I'm going to end up here. And I would say that was not the case. If you go back 34 years and you were to ask, is anybody going to say this guy's going to achieve this? I don't know if anybody would have said that. I was a young guy. I was very shy. I had a role to deal with the public here, but I wasn't comfortable speaking in public. So there was a lot of things that I had to learn and get comfortable with over the years. But basically, this place allowed me to grow and become, who I am today.
We definitely see that. You seem very comfortable. So that growth is very, very apparent. So you're basically saying from the start, your thought was not, I'm going to end up being the Chief of Staff, but this place kind of molded you into being able to attain that for yourself.
Correct.
Yeah, love that. So what would you say was the biggest learning curve? So moving from like a highly specialized external affairs role to a more broad, integrated Chief of Staff position? And how did you adapt your skill set to that?
So previously, I had a lot of opportunities by getting involved in all types of initiatives, issues, any big projects and things going on. I would dive in, get involved. It was an opportunity to learn. It was an opportunity to build skills and an opportunity to get experience and to show what I can do. So one of the lessons there is you have to kind of grab opportunities and seek
go for it. Yes.
With this role as a Chief of Staff, my biggest struggle has been taking a step back. I have to stay focused on the strategic priorities. I have to focus on what's most important in terms of what needs to be achieved. So I still need to be involved in a lot of things. So I have to keep my schedule kind of open. So I can't get bogged down in the weeds with too many things. I have to have time. I still get involved, but what I've been learning is almost get involved as needed.
Yes.
My role is to make sure that the right outcomes are achieved, not to actually do it. So, which is at a certain point, making sure that the right people are assigned. Do we need more resources? Is there a bottleneck? Is there a hang up? Figure out what that is, get it moving, and then I step back and move on to the next thing.
Right. Yeah. Being intentional of where you're dedicating that time, right? Yes. Sometimes it's more important to kind of dedicate it to the people that are going to get it done, right? And putting your support behind them. So yeah, I think that's an important lesson, knowing what to prioritize. That's what I'm hearing from you. So you started in 1991, right? Is that correct? And now you progressed internally to Chief of Staff, demonstrating that significant dedication to obtain this role. What motivated you to stay and grow your entire career at the LIRR? And I know you said you grew up on the railroad, so that's one there. What is the biggest lesson that you learned from your time starting as a station appearance maintainer that you still apply today?
So one big lesson is when you start as a cleaner, that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah.
One, don't set limits on yourself. Like people, no matter where they're at, they're like, I'm just this, I'm just that. They almost set limits on themselves. So one is you have to stay motivated within of what you want to be and what you want to achieve. Stay focused on that no matter where you're at. People may not see it yet, or they may not see you that way yet, but you have to still, keep that within yourself. So it doesn't matter where you start. It's really about yourself and your abilities and the opportunities. Another lesson as a cleaner, again, you're just a cleaner, not a glamorous position, but everybody notice how you conduct yourself, your work ethic, your attitude.
Work ethic.
There's some simple things that, those aren't part of the job, but that people are noticing. So, to be able to get the next opportunity, that stuff has to be, in place. You have a bad attitude, you won't get other chances.
You still need to have like that initiative, right?
Yes.
So,
and then another lesson is, no matter where you start, no matter what level you're at, everybody faces challenges. Everybody has obstacles. There's different barriers that everybody has to face. So it's, but they can be overcome.
So focusing on that, definitely. Like, what can you do within your role to still stand out in a sense, right? Or
also when there's disappointments, right? Careers aren't a straight path. There's times that you go for a position, you don't get it. You have an interview, you get passed over, and you always have a choice when that happens, right? You can get frustrated, blame everybody else. What I've always liked to say is, when those things happen, you focus in on yourself. What could I do? What could I have done differently? What should I be doing differently? Why is it that they didn't see what my potential was? That maybe I wasn't communicating right? What skills am I lacking? So you always stay focused on what you can control to be able to then be ready when the next time comes.
Yeah, so like looking for the lesson on what you can improve. How can you plan for maybe a better outcome, right, in the future?
And a few times, right, I went for something because, sometimes you have to go for what's available. And then I didn't get it. And it turns out that, sometimes you're in a department that you like what you're doing or you love what you're doing, but there's no room to advance, or you feel pressure to go somewhere else to be able to advance or to make more money or whatever else your motivation is. So that in my sense, the times that it didn't work out, in a way, it was for the best because...
A blessing in disguise, right? Yes. Yeah, that is good to always see. I feel like having that mindset of always seeing like, what is a lesson or like what you can learn instead of sometimes we do feel pressure, or I guess I would say, we can be bogged down by our egos in a sense, right? So yes, I love
always
that
just keeping yourself humble, and then again, it's a few instances where I applied for something just because it was a promotion, but then I knew to myself afterwards, that really wasn't the right role for me. I really wasn't fully qualified, but you still have to try,
Yeah, and you didn't limit yourself, which is obvious. And here you are, chief of staff. So it's definitely worked out in terms of how your career has progressed, which is definitely beautiful to see and inspiring for a lot of us that are still on the earlier parts of our journey. So what advice would you give to someone that's looking to grow into leadership? So that's whether they're just getting started or maybe they're deciding that they want to pivot mid-career.
So there's 3 lessons here. One is, nothing happens until you make a decision, and you can't make a decision until you know what you want. So like myself, early on, I studied political science. I was always interested in politics and history and philosophy and, that kind of stuff, which it didn't seem like, how are you going to apply that to railroad? So I was working here at first, and like, how are you going to apply this to railroad? I didn't see how. So, early on, I was always I never saw myself staying here because I felt I would have to leave to get involved in that stuff. Then one day I saw a job advertised, which was like Director of Government and Community Affairs. And I'm like, wow, what a cool sounding job. I would love that job.
Yeah.
I wasn't qualified. I knew, but that set a direction. I'm like, that became a goal to, strive to, then it became, how can I get there? Then another lesson is you can't wait to be given the opportunity to start acting like a leader. Again, no matter what level you're at, you have to master what you're doing and then find ways to contribute and demonstrate that you're ready to do more.
Absolutely.
So in a way, you have to like manifest yourself. You have to have that image of yourself of where you want to be. And
it started with the vision, right? Like you're
yes.
saying, you're like, oh, government affairs, how can I get into that?
And a lot of times, I know I talk to a lot of young people and they're looking for advice. They're frustrated. They don't know what to do. They want to advance and they feel that they're stuck. But I always challenge them with you. The first step is, learn your organization. Again, when you have a junior position and you have actually more time, you can actually use that time to study org charts, to talk to people, like use that.
Mm-hmm.
But then the key is you have to figure out where you may not know where you want to be, but then how is it that you may not know exactly what you want to do because you don't understand all the things available yet, but you should know like how do you want to be used. So what I mean in that sense, like I feel like you have to look at yourself as a tool and how do you want to be used. In my own, early on in my career, my motivation was, again, this is the idealistic philosopher in me was, I want to be paid to think. That was the idea I had in myself. And then government community affairs, in a sense, you wind up
strategic thinking, right?
You're put in these situations and you have to figure it out. So and then I was, I loved it. And then the last thing is, you have to do hard things. In times of transition organizations, there's times of turmoil, there's crisis. When like bad things are happening, most people's instinct is to like, oh, this is a very risky situation. I don't want to be involved with something that can fail. I don't want to take a risk that can hurt my career. But really, those times when everybody's stepping away, that's the times you have to step in and put yourself out there and start, contributing. Accept the challenge in a sense, right? Yes. Be willing to step up. Even if the outcome is not, even if you don't see, you might know how it's going to be resolved, but that's the thing. You have to be in there to then be able to try to figure it out. Be part of the process. And that's how you'll obtain that lesson that might have been needed for your next step, for that next move. Yeah, I think that's some very valuable lessons there. I hope you're all getting what he's putting down. So you have a BA in political science, and you also served as a communication specialist in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserves. How has that academic and military trainings specifically shaped your approach to communication under pressure and strategic planning in a high-stakes corporate environment? So first, to clarify, in my military role, communication specialist, do you know what that was? It sounds fancy, right? I don't know. I'm thinking like old big radios that I don't know. That's what I have in my mind. No. So that was my job is to, you're with the infantry, the troops that are out there in the field, and you're carrying a radio. Oh, so you were like it wasn't a fancy like communication strategic and all that, but and then I was actually right before I started here, when Desert Storm happened, I got put on active duty. I was in college full time. All of a sudden, you get this letter, you have to go on active duty. You have to leave school. That was very life changing and like traumatic in a way. And I didn't appreciate it at the time, but now looking back, the military training is like really staying calm under pressure. And when there's chaotic times, there's a lot of high stakes, people emotions get, the best of them, the voices are raised. What I've learned is at those moments when it's the most chaos, the most emotional is I go the opposite way. I tone it down. In a sense, my training was a lot of when I deal with all these public meetings, going into community groups, people are upset, you're in front of an angry mob, an angry crowd. And again, you have to kind of manage the emotions, bring down the emotions. One is, in my sense, like I find like you can't think when you're all emotion, you can't think. So to me, it's staying calm, to be able to think, to be able to listen, to see what the possible solution could be. That's when your like listening ear becomes active, right? Yes. So you can kind of pick out, all right, what do we have to focus on? Where do we have to start? Where do we begin with how we're going to address these? And again, people are complaining when something goes wrong, or something went wrong, you don't know exactly why, but then you have to listen to figure out what really is the issue? What is it that we have to address, right? Yes. And then from there, we can start going through all the different options that we have on how we're going to move. So instead, you have to like slow down your thinking during this time, and because this has to happen in real time. Yes, exactly. So that's my biggest lesson is how to be ready for those moments and be that level-headed, right? Yes. Very, very good.
So if you had to describe your leadership style in 3 words, maybe even in musical terms, if that's something you prefer, what would they be?
I would pick 3 words would be a listener, a connector, and a conductor. And I have a 4th word, which is improviser, but I'll stick with those first 3. So listener is, again, I'm always the person that listens. I'm always listening. I can always see both sides of things. Whatever it is, there's always 2 sides. I always manage to be able to stay open-minded to see the both sides. And then also listening for perspective, and then just to be able to find the right solution. The second thing is connector, which is bringing people together. Like in my role now, it's like when something is going to happen, like say, for example, we have these fare changes coming up, right? A big deal for the MTA, a big thing for the public. So to be ready for that, it's connecting the right people internally, making sure everybody at all levels know what's going on. You know, people that deal with the public, people behind the scenes, everybody has to know, it has to be coordinated. Then it's also coordinating with, they say, headquarters, right? Executive leadership at headquarters is also dealing with the press office in terms of how the public can proceed. So I feel like a connector, always bringing people to, bringing the perspectives too, because sometimes even within departments, you know, it could be a secret, like, you know, the leadership management has discussions, but that information doesn't always trickle down. So I'm always conscious of that and making sure that folks understand always at all levels what's going on, why we're doing it, and why it's important. And the third one is, again, conductor, in terms of, I mentioned the biggest challenge in this role is, you know, while it seems I'm in the middle of everything, but like in the conductor of an orchestra, I'm not seeking to, even though I'm there, my goal is not to draw attention to myself, is really to be.
Or play the instrument.
Correct. I'm not actually playing, but I'm just making sure getting involved is needed to keep things moving and synchronized.
Yeah, it is very important. And I think the qualities of being a listener is something that not enough people appreciate, right? It is getting that perspective from all levels. At the senior level, of course, you're having conversations with people that many of us at the lower employee level may not ever be in contact with. So I think it is important to have that listening ear for your fields as well, right? Because there are things that being in a senior leadership role, you may not be as familiar with, right? Or actually have knowledge of what happens. So when you take that role seriously of how important it is to listen to your people, I think you get a better sense of, as you said, like, what are the problems? What are the true issues that we need to address? And like, how are we going to address it?
And related to that, going back to the previous question, a challenge in this role is, you know, before when I had my external affairs role, and I had been doing it for like 16 years, I felt like I had mastered it. And then I had this pattern. So like, you know, I had a gut reaction to what the solutions could be. Now in this role, I'm very often put in situations where there's topics I don't have the awareness or experience with. I have to kind of give direction, and I don't even understand the topic.
Right.
So it's like the challenge is like how to understand it enough to be able to, you know.
And practicing, I guess, building up that gut instinct now in this role as well. That's what you're practicing. I love that. I do love that. So you have participated in the Leadership APTA and Energy Partnership programs. What was the single most valuable takeaway from these professional development experiences, and how did you implement it at the LIRR?
So the biggest lesson was participating in these kind of, Energia was like a Long Island based leadership program. APTA was like a national based leadership program. One is exposes you to, we're part of a larger industry. And then the importance of networking. You have to build networking externally, but then also same way internally. You need an internal network of, you know, to be successful here, you need help from all people from all different departments. So it's being conscious of that, building a network, and then also when I first went to the APTA APTA conference, it's like you have CEOs, you have people at all levels, and at the time I wasn't that senior, but you realize, wait a second, we're all here attending a conference. I can just go up to you, introduce myself, and just say hello, talk to. So it's like I learned how not to be afraid to just approach somebody and talk. You don't want to waste people's time, but
being mindful, yes. I'm sure you had great.
But you have access.
Yes.
So same thing, within organizations, I think folks in senior roles have to provide that access to, when somebody has a question that needs advice, career advice, be available to them.
Yeah. I think it's so easy to sometimes get caught up in our bubble, right? Our MTA bubble, sometimes even like agency wide, right? And like that's one of the things that I truly appreciate from all of the different employee resource groups, Latinos and Friends being one of them, but we have so many available at MTA. And it's the access now to have conversations with people from Metro North, from LIRR, from subways, right? And like finding how we're also all connected and may have similar issues that we're navigating, although like the way that we do things may be a little bit different, but we can still learn from each other, right? And that's why these opportunities to network are so important within our organizations and outside, yeah.
Another thing related to that is, for me, in my example, for example, not having, say, political experience per se, but I did love history. I did love politics. I did love philosophy. I did like to read about leadership. So with me, I did a lot of reading. Mm-hmm. And then, again, there's a lot of lessons in books.
Yes.
A lot of autobiographies about political figures and historical leaders. And at the time, I was just enjoying reading it, but then it's like, subconsciously you're picking up lessons and how to deal with situations. So yes. I think I grew a lot from that. Mm-hmm. I developed skills that I didn't know yet I needed by just reading.
And then learning how they can apply, right? Like even these history lessons, and it's things that happened in our past, but again, you learn and you can still apply to modern day, right? Mm-hmm. Like these are still incredibly valuable lessons. So I do think that's important. And I think in part of these participating in like these professional development programs, it does also help kind of hone some of those skills, right? And
it's like there's like the technical skills of whatever your role is, but there's all these soft skills or like decision making, and
listening. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
And that's another thing that these organizations you learn, you pick up those things.
Yeah. I think that is something that as you get higher in leadership, and I'm sure that this is the case for you, you start seeing that you are developing those skills a lot more, those soft skills a lot more, because to your point, now the technical aspect, you're not as responsible, like personally responsible for. Now your role is more of the orchestra that you are conducting, right? And how everyone is playing a part into it. So I do think it's important for everyone to just recognize those soft skills and they're transferable, right? I'm sure that you can say that there are skills that you learn from being a cleaner, right? To your point, that you can still apply as a chief of staff, right? So do you have any of those? I don't know, I'm putting on the spot, but anything that you feel like you still kind of maybe do that you did back then?
Actually, more a different thing I want to mention is, say, when I was a cleaner, or then afterwards a ticket clerk. Mm-hmm. Like a lesson I learned was, and then so when I started here, I was working full time and going to school full time, and then I graduated,
which is also a lot of dedication. So
I graduated, and then I set up an appointment with a senior director in human resources at the time. I'm like, I graduated, I got my degree,
I'm ready. Put me in there.
What are my opportunities?
Yeah.
And I was so disappointed with that conversation.
Yeah.
Because what she told me was, why don't you think about being a conductor? Why don't you think about being an engineer? They get paid a lot of money. And I'm like, that's not what I wanted to hear.
Right. That's not what I came to you for.
But again, that was one of those moments, right, when you feel like you have a barrier, but then it's like you have to kind of be stubborn. Mm-hmm. Right? You can't quit. And then you have to, so now how am I going to?
And you had your vision. So you already kind of had like the goal for, I'm making my way this way, right? I hear what you're saying. That's not necessarily the path that I'm looking at.
And even then, right, at the time, my next step was from the ticket clerk was to be an agent, which is like a supervisor. Mm-hmm. And then again, I applied. I'm like, I'm ready for that. I applied, and then guess what? I got denied because I didn't have enough experience. Mm. So again, those back-to-back heartbreak in a way.
Yeah.
But then I got my big break a few years later, which was.
I was going to ask. I want to hear about that.
My big break was like how the railroad used to have these getaway packages. To tourism things to bring people out to Montauk and wineries and the lighthouse. And so every summer an internal employee gets hired to actually be a tour guide. So basically, the whole summer, this Saturday, you're going to go out to Montauk. You're making all the arrangements. So basically, you have 30 to 100 something people. They're coming from all over the city. You're meeting them on the train at Jamaica. You're going out to, say, Ronkonkoma. You have a bus driver meeting you guys, and then you're there making sure everybody gets off, making sure everybody gets on. Right? You're heading back. You're running late. You missed the train. Now you have to make a decision to, you're calling ahead. Okay, can we make it to Babylon? And I'm calling, so again, that gave me a lot of experience dealing with these situations. You don't have time to call a supervisor. You don't have time to call a manager.
Right, so like wait for someone else to make the decision for you. You have to step in,
and you have
right?
All these people that they're looking for you to.
Yeah. You got the itinerary, right? You're the one that's in charge.
So funny story with that. One time, speaking of APTA, right? So New York City was hosting APTA that year. MTA was hosting APTA. So at the time, my job was to conduct a tour to go out to see the wineries and go out to Greenport and something else. So it was on a Monday during the conference. So it turns out that it was like, I think it was about 20 something. It was all the wives of these executives that were participating in the conference. Yeah. So my job was to
keep the wives happy.
So guess what? So we go to a winery first. Everybody had fun. Then we get on the bus. We go to Greenport, and we had like an hour and a half. Let them walk around and have lunch. And then I was with the bus driver. We were gonna take the ferry over to Shelter Island, and we were gonna meet everybody there. So after I got the bus driver on his lane, I'm going to get something to eat. As I'm walking around, a few of these ladies, I'm running into them. Greenport is a small village. So these ladies a few of them are saying, Hector, everything is closed. There's not a lot of stuff open. Turns out we didn't know that the village kind of closes on Mondays. Oh. So I'm like, oh shoot, what do I do now? So I had to quickly call the bus driver. I'm like, listen, don't get on the ferry. Stay there. Yeah. And then I have to like round up all these ladies.
Yeah.
Round up these ladies, get them on the bus. And then as we're driving, Sound Avenue is out there, the main road up there in the North Fork. Now find a restaurant. So we went to like 3 places. Pull up here. I go up to the restaurant. Hey, can you accommodate 23 ladies right now?
Yeah.
So two places couldn't, and then I found a place that could. We had lunch. Everybody was happy, and then I'm like, well, what are we gonna do next? So I decided to bring them to Tanger Outlets because I'm like, women like to go shopping.
Definitely, that's a good choice.
Back, and everybody was so happy. Nobody
remembered about the spots that were closed.
No complaints afterwards. So,
it didn't work out. It worked out in their favor, I'm sure. They got some good shopping.
So I got a lot of. I was able to demonstrate a lot during that, and again, that helped me then move. So I did that for the summer. Then I had to go back to ticket, which I wasn't happy about. But then I got lucky. Then 3 months later, there was an opening in the office. I became a supervisor. A year later, the manager. Got promoted. I became the manager. Then 2 years later, I became a director. So then
you started progressing from there.
And then I thought it was going to be easy like that. I'm like, every 3 years I'm going to get a promotion. Right. But that's not the case.
Then you had a little gap, I guess.
So again, I ended up where I always wanted to be in government affairs. Was we had a new president at the time. She wasn't happy with how government affairs was being run. So my boss at the time got asked, "Can you so?" Government affairs, public affairs is all part of the public affairs department. So she asked I was in a marketing area at the time to ask, do you have a director that you can spare to help out? So she asked me, it's like, would you be interested? Would I be interested? This is what I've been wanting to do.
The goal. That's beautiful.
So my opportunity was I actually came on a lateral. I was still on my old payroll, but I was here for a year, and it worked out. And they gave me then a full-time position here, and then the rest is history.
Wow, that it came back like full circle almost, and you're still progressing. So beautiful.
When I said the big break was again, I got lucky that one, tour job, the summer job, that it was just a summer job, but it was part of the larger department, which is where it's like, because that exposed me to the VP of the department and all the senior management. So again, that gave me the exposure to people know me as an entity. And then
having more of the access to like those senior leaderships, and then them being able to see how you were able to step up in a challenge where you didn't necessarily have a blueprint or like a guideline for how to navigate, right? You didn't have the backup plans like, well, if this is closed, you're going to go here. You had to figure that all on the fly. So that is
And I have another lesson here, but I just forgot it.
Yeah.
Say that again.
Well, you figured things out just basically on the fly, right? And it kind of, to your point about the lessons that you learned in the military, was how to kind of be level-headed and like how to, you know, in chaos and in uncertainty, being able to assess, well, what are the challenges here that we need to address, and like, how do I go about it? So I don't know if that helped trigger the lesson.
I know, it'll come back later.
It'll come back, I'm sure. It will. So we do want to close with our final question and then open it up to the audience to see if they have any questions for us. So for our final question, ¿cuál es su cafecito favorito y con quién le encantaría compartir un cafecito? So in English, let me translate, yes. What is your favorite coffee and who would you love to share that coffee with?
My favorite is cafe con leche or latte,
Yeah.
which is just espresso with steamed milk.
Mm-hmm.
And tying my fascination with history and music is, it would have to be, I don't know if you've heard of Israel Cachao Lopez, a famous Cuban bassist, or the Buena Vista Social Club.
Yes, yeah.
I would pick
on Broadway
one
now.
of these old musicians, 70, 80-year-old musicians that play a lot of this old school Cuban music.
Oh.
And it would be a conversation about the history, about the influences from Africa, from Spain, from jazz and blues, and and then from being from Puerto Rico or Dominican Republic, people in the country, people in the city, in the dot of New Orleans, Louis Armstrong. So
yeah,
I will get into it all,
That would be a great conversation. Very musical too. I love that. I would love to have a coffee with my grandmother, who has passed, but she was the one that taught me how to drink coffee. So I need to honor that and sit with her and have a coffee with her. So we do want to open it up now to the audience, and we will have Erica read out some questions.
Yeah, to start off, we want to piggyback. You mentioned earlier that one of the things that you're now working on is kind of helping out the bottlenecking with your staff and stuff. So one of the questions that we wanted to pose is how are you able to identify the unique skill sets in your staff that isn't normally that you would read on their resume? Like, how do you take that time to kind of see like how you could fit people together and how to task them on certain, things that you're doing on in your department?
So with that is, so typically when there's a task, what I meant is like, these are technical things. Mm-hmm. So they're the experts in their thing. So it's getting them to explain it, trying to give a solution, and I have to kind of challenge it a little bit to make sure does it sound right? Does it make sense? Does it seem? Yeah. One phrase I like to use a lot, this is from my external affairs days, which is, there's the court of law and the court of public opinion. Us as public employees, right? Like a lot of times, say the engineering, the technical staff will be like, no, with our MTA, with transit, with the railroad, we can do this. We don't have to listen. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, that's okay. Like you might be right for the court of law, but in the public opinion, you'll get beat up. So to me, there's a higher standard. You have to look. That's a lens. You have to. So what? I kind of lost track, but basically, it's like whatever the solution or whatever you're going to do, you have to be conscious of how it's going to be perceived by the public, how you're going to criticize. So I'm always looking at it from that standard.
But, and also, like, how do you identify the right people for those kind of like specific scenarios that you might need their support in? How do you like know or get to know your people enough to know like, oh, I know who would be well equipped to handle this?
It's almost like a two-pronged approach. You can go directly to the head of the department. Mm-hmm. You ask them, but then sometimes you have to go deeper into the organization themselves. It's like wherever the information is.
Yeah.
Right, because if you go to somebody and they can't answer you, they don't have the first hand, then like you have to go to the level of who actually knows what's going on.
Yeah. That is sometimes a little hard to navigate with an MTA. Sometimes knowing who the right person really is.
But that goes back to developing a network.
Yes.
So it's like within the MTA, within so it's like. So when you have a good network, then you're just a few phone calls away from getting to you.
Putting your feelers out there, you're like, all right, I may not know, you may not know, but I think you know who may know. So help me get there, right? Yes.
So diving away from your LIRR responsibilities, how do you relax, and what are things that you like to enjoy either by yourself or with your family? Is there anything specific or traditions during this holiday seasons that you guys do?
Oh, a lot of things. No. So I like to cook. So I like to host family during all holidays. So I'm the our house is the house that everybody comes to.
I'm inviting myself. I want to invite
I relax by
parties.
cooking and exploring different recipes, different things. I relax by listening to music and exploring the history of music and that. I like to read. I like to read literature. I like to read nonfiction. I like to go to theater. So all this cultural stuff that's opposite of being
well cultured. Yes, you're well cultured. That's good.
All of your LIRR responsibilities.
So those things. Some of those stuff is not. Like I'll read difficult things, but that I have to keep my brain engaged and challenged, but it offsets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially the day-to-day work that you have to do.
Is there any particular book that has influenced your thinking or your career, and why?
Actually, so early on, when I first got my first opportunity to be in management or manager. Again, I never took management classes. I didn't have any management training. But it's an old book now. It's probably from the 90s. It was called, the gist, I forgot the exact title, but it was like, what, the guy's name was McCormack. His last name was like, what they didn't teach you at Harvard Business School. Mm-hmm. So I learned 2 lessons. So this guy was like a businessman that worked his way up. So he wasn't like didn't have an MBA or anything. Mm-hmm. So the gist of the book was, in an MBA, you learn all this corporate stuff, but he was focused on like the
real world,
and the soft skills. And, so I would read things like that, and I picked up lessons that I would always apply. So when I first became a manager, I was reading a lot of business type of books like that to pick up lessons that I needed to.
Within the same topic, is there any book that you would recommend to people just starting out at the MTA, LIRR, that would help guide them into their career path or where they think they may want to go?
In terms of that, I don't know if it's a book, but it's more about learning your organization, right? Like there's different levels, like people don't realize like the MTA overall, each agency, we're like cities.
Yes.
We have every type of career, mm-hmm. right? Every type of kind of career you could think of. We have doctors, we have lawyers, we have accountants, we have project managers, we have so any kind
plumbers,
of exactly. So every craft. So we're like our own universe. Mm-hmm. But so learn, like the first step is learning what's out there, mm-hmm. and then seeing where whether your skills you have that apply or where you or decide where you want to go, and then figure out what you need to have to be able to get there.
You actually made me think of something. I meant to share this earlier. I was having a conversation with someone and they shared this quote: if you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. So that's something to just keep in mind when you are in a...
I understand it.
Like if you were saying don't keep limited, right? Have an open mind, other opportunities, right? If you're fighting for how you can't do things, for all of the things that you can't do, then you get to keep that. That's all you're ever going to do, right? So just a way to keep an open mind and just explore the possibilities and opportunities that are available in transit.
You just reminded me of a lesson.
There we go.
A lesson I picked up for I forgot where, it was some random book, but I read this book and it was about, and what it said was that in every organization, in every department, there's always one guy that doesn't always have to follow the rules, that can get away with stuff, that can make judgment calls. So when I read, I'm like, I want to be that guy.
Right. That's a good goal, good aspiration. And
the people would like to know. So this is always a famous question for us. Are you a Yankees fan or a Mets fan?
So I was born in Corona because my grandfather came in the late 60s when the Mets got established. So growing up, it was a Mets household.
Okay.
And I always was into the Mets up until forgot what year, 2000 and something, when Beltran struck out looking, and I was working there, the gating programs.
Yeah.
And then all the fans leaving, all depressed. And then at that moment, I decided I'm not going to care about baseball anymore.
Gave up.
So,
Like, I'm not going to be sad and depressed leaving a game, right?
Yes.
All right, that's fair. If you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would say, again, I describe myself as a young, naive, and like very shy. I would encourage myself to be more open earlier. Like right now, I'm very comfortable talking openly and sharing, and like not be, like before I was more reserved. And then again, going back to, you have to always be conscious of perception.
Mm-hmm.
So because I was so reserved and quiet, because I was a listener, because of that, sometimes people can interpret that. Like they don't know how to interpret that. Like, is he mean? Is he,
It kind of made you probably not as approachable.
Correct.
As, yeah.
So how were you able to work out of that? And when in your career do you feel like you kind of blossomed out of that?
It was when I was, I guess, when I was in my comfort zone of when, like, I was mastering my field,
Yeah.
and then I was able to then become a more person.
So what do you feel is something that you take away from the people that are retiring? I know a lot of people are coming in new, but I feel like there's always great things that you could take away from the community that is getting ready to retire. Is there anything that someone has left for you to take on or to think even further or drive even further as they were departing either MTA as a whole or LIRR? I always like to look at those little gems that, they leave that we tend to pick up and continue to.
I would put it out to the listeners, which is like I'm one of those that I'm at the tail end.
Mm-hmm.
Like, while we're still here, like take advantage of that. Just like, when kids are in school, like you have access to professors and teachers, and people don't take advantage of it. Like just talking about live, asking questions, like
yeah.
I would say, like, don't be afraid to reach out.
Yeah, I always told my son the same thing, like for school especially. I'm like, this is your opportunity. Like these are going to be potentially mentors for you. So you got to have those conversations.
And it's like, there's you can learn from experience. And then growing up, I remember my listening to stories of within my own family. You hear about the stories of all the mistakes people make. I remember my dad saying, like, you don't have to make those same mistakes. So you could actually learn by hearing what went wrong and what people did wrong.
I was actually recently listening to Stephen Bartlett from Diary of the CEO, that he has a podcast. And that's one of the things that he said as a kind of serial entrepreneur, his biggest lesson has been that when he encounters a problem, thinking, who has already solved this problem and how can I talk to them so that I can get the answer quicker instead of going through all the pains and, issues of figuring it out for yourself.
Similarly, again, I mentioned networking and apt and getting involved. Again, like there's a niche situation, you didn't know that, you could reach out to colleagues at other agencies throughout the country. Yep. Maybe they, how did they
address it? Absolutely.
Is there one practical step that you would be able to share with people that are in the process right now of, interviewing for their promotions and setting out to look for, new opportunities within their units or looking outside of their units?
Yes, you have to. I mentioned about you have to see yourself as a tool and how you want to be used. Similarly, you have to market yourself. You're a product. Yes. So how you brand yourself, I remember what I was going to say before. So again, as a young manager, this is back in the 90s. I remember like they used to be like on Fridays, you're able to like dress down and wear jeans. You didn't have to wear a tie. Yeah. But sometimes there's things you have a right to do, but it's not always in your best interest. Mm-hmm. So at that time, I realized it wasn't in my best interest to dress down, even though I could. And the reason I say that is, so again, I was part of the larger public affairs department. And typically there'd be meetings, external meetings with, say, the New York Mets, with New York Racing Association, with the Belmont Stakes, big events. A VP or senior director, people, there would be conflicts, they couldn't go.
And you would have to step
So guess
in.
what? They're looking in, like, who can we send to this? Mm-hmm. Are we going to send this guy dressed down, or are you going to send the guy that's still dressed up? Mm-hmm. Even though I was quiet, at least they knew I was going to say the wrong thing and make things worse. So I got lucky that I would get the opportunity to be sent out there representing the railroad, the MTA, making a good impression. So again, I had to how I conducted myself, so like that became all part of my training, and I got used to that. I got used to be putting out in the spot because there'd be a meeting with like 100 people, and then I'm the only railroad MTA guy there, and everybody's like puts a question to the MTA guy. And at the time, I didn't necessarily know all the answers, but again, there's ways of acknowledging, and so I had to learn to think on my feet quickly and represent well.
Yeah.
Are there any failures or setbacks that taught you something that you're still using today?
Yes. To advance, you have to be ambitious and aggressive to an extent, but it's a balance, right? You can't be too aggressive. You can't be too ambitious. Sometimes you're trying too hard. You're gonna
put people off too.
Put people off. You're gonna threaten people, and then also you're gonna if you're just doing it to just make yourself look good. If that's your sole motivation, that's not always good too. It's about what's good for
the larger picture. Yeah.
I just lost my thought with that.
It's fine. And lastly, what are you most proud of so far?
That's a good one.
I'm most proud of is being part of something, like some major projects, like being part of some successful major projects. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of when I first started doing the government affairs. I'm most proud of is helping to improve the reputation of the railroad. Now I'm part of helping it from this end, but before representing the public is, the railroad had a different reputation in the past, like these cowboys and reckless cowboys don't care about the public, but engaging with the public and people got to see you as to go see you as a person, and then then you reflecting and getting people to see the railroad as we're listening, we're trying to improve, so helping to improve the reputation of the railroad is what I'm most proud of.
It's beautiful.
And to your point, in the court of the public opinion, right?
Yes.
You're able to make that shift.
To the point, how sometimes somebody that you can have a conflict with that could become you come closer with.
Yes.
Is again when I first started, there were certain communities that were very hostile to the railroad. I'm not going to name the names, but then over years now, some of these civic leaders, some of these officials that were the community that were the most hostile, now there's
your biggest supporters.
Yeah, now the other day, the civic leader from Laurelton reached out of the blue. I haven't talked to him in a few years, even though I'm not in that role anymore. He just called to see how I'm doing.
Oh,
it's
you develop those relationships that are important, and in that role, having relationships with the community is extremely important because that is who we are serving ultimately, right?
And I have to say, people in the chats are saying how great of a mentor you are. So
you've inspired some people out there.
Very inspiring, and I have to say, just listening to your story, it's beautiful, and it's a tale that's honest, and it's loyal, and it's giving back to the people and to the community.
Yeah, it's honorable. Yes, very good. And with that, I think we will end our interview. So we do want to thank you, Hector, for allowing us the time to sit down with you, have our cafecito. I made this cup too, by the way. That's why it's colorful and a little different. I have my MTA cup in my office, but I brought this one special so that I can have this conversation with Hector. But we do thank you again for your time.
So my goal here was not to be open, honest, and not robotic. So I hope I succeed.
You were not robotic in the slightest. So
I used to be early on when I would have to speak. It would be worse.
Yeah, no, you seem very comfortable. I think you've definitely grown into this. Wonderful.
We thank you for your time, and this was something that I think that everyone is going to be able to take something away from. So it's truly inspiring. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes.